And good morning to you too. Jason, Anthony, welcome in, guys. Tim Hill, unrestricted free agent on a post-Memorial Day weekend. College baseball tournament bracket is out, and that is what we'll lead with this morning as we continue to rock into the show. How have we gotten here? I'm talking about from the South Carolina perspective. Only one South Carolina school in the NCAA baseball tournament this year. And it is a heck of a run for Coastal Carolina, no doubt about it. So I don't want to minimize what Gary Gilmore and those guys have done, but this is certainly more of a South Carolina baseball fan conversation, I feel like. Especially from the Gamecock and Clemson perspective to not be in the NCAA tournament. I just saw the number from Matt Conley there, who works for On3. I think it was from 1987 to 2019. It happened one time for Clemson. From 1987 to 2019, 30 plus years, one time Clemson didn't make the NCAA tournament. Now it's happened the last 2 years in a row. It's happened two times now under Mark Kingston. It happened under Chad Holbrook a couple of times as well. It is, I think, difficult for a lot of us as college baseball fans in the state of South Carolina to kind of to fathom or to at least watch, to witness, right? And then the news popping out, I think it was relatively late Friday, that Mark Kingston will remain as the South Carolina baseball coach. I put it out right as I saw the news that it wasn't shocking to me. I don't think Mark Kingston's a bad baseball coach, but it is shocking to me to see a decade after the Gamecocks played for their third straight national championship, having won the previous two, that this is where South Carolina baseball is. So starting a bit of a bummer on a Tuesday morning in that way, and we'll get the ticker rolling for you on the video portion of the program. You're joining us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. You can see it at the bottom there, all the NCAA baseball information that includes Coastal Carolina starting against Virginia up in the East Carolina Regional, 6 o'clock on Friday. 9 SEC, 9 ACC teams making the field of 64. NC State, I saw one national college baseball writer, I think it was Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, say it was the biggest shock in his 18 years covering the NCAA tournament that the NC State team this year didn't make the field of 64. I think Ole Miss from the SEC, a big surprise that they did make it. So those two teams, some other notable ones in there. What I put, Rutgers won 40-plus games. Wofford won 40-plus games. Wofford not quite as much, not being in a Power 5 conference, but you win that many games and you get left out. I do have some sympathy for you. When you're NC State and you've lost 20-plus games, and the tournament committee, I think, explained it by saying that they went 4-6 in ACC series, and 3 of the 4 teams that they beat aren't going to the NCAA tournament. The only NCAA tournament team they won a series from in the ACC was Georgia Tech. But everything NC State baseball has gone through with the College World Series COVID issue, oh, man, dramatic, pretty brutal. Easy to feel for them, maybe more than another program out there. York, good morning to you as well on the YouTube live stream. So tell me what you guys are thinking, because the easy knee-jerk reaction, you see it all over social media, right? From let's start with the Gamecock baseball perspective, and then we can broaden things out from there, is how can you keep a guy like Mark Kingston, not a guy like him specifically, how can you keep him now going into his 5th full year after being part of the program, being ahead of the program for 5 years and missing the NCAA tournament for a couple of times, not having an option to go to the NCAA tournament one of those years with COVID. So the easy knee-jerk reaction is say, how dare you? You got to have a switch, the whole thing, be outraged. I get that, but I think you guys also get the financial implications of that. I think it would be $2.2 million, and where the athletics department is, especially after the Will Muschamp buyout and the whole thing. So you got that going on. You got passing out on the NCAA tournament. Chad Holbrook still hasn't gotten him there. Monty Lee, 2 years in a row at Clemson. Tiger fans not happy at all about that. Defend Kingston, I think, is what anonymous texter here is saying. I'd like to hear it. Well, the easy explanation from this year's perspective is obviously injuries, right? And I get it completely if you say that's not a valid defense. Everybody has injuries. Everybody deals with issues. You have to have your program at a certain level to maintain, to absorb all of that and move on and win. I guess also I would say when you finish, you get the number 10 seed in the SEC tournament. 9 teams made it. Ole Miss didn't even make the SEC tournament, right? And ended up making the NCAA tournament. It wasn't an embarrassing year from that perspective, but to lose as many non-conference games as they did, to lose as consistently as they did to USC Upstate and Presbyterian and the whole deal, I'm with you. I was a bit surprised that there wasn't a move made. I'm not shocked by it knowing the circumstances. So if you're asking for a defense here, I don't have one for you other than what I just said. And I get it if you don't feel like that's good enough for South Carolina baseball. Let's get another opinion in on here. From the Hyundai dealership, is that where you're joining us this morning?
I am. This is the service department at North Charleston Hyundai. It doesn't get better than that.
Beautiful, man. What'd you make? Let's start with college baseball. I know you've been covering it forever, just like me. What'd you make of the field of 64? And I guess basically where we're sitting in the state of South Carolina.
Well, yeah, I thought NC State and Rutgers got hosed, but it was a really tough year with a lot of stolen bids. So I'm not, excuse me, I'm not surprised about Wofford not getting in, although I thought Wofford deserved to get in. I mean, it's funny. I covered Charleston Southern this weekend up at High Point, North Carolina, trying to steal a bid, right? And so in one way, I'm like, man, the conference tournament is awesome because it allows something like that to happen where Charleston Southern has 2 games below 500 and can play for a Big South title. In the exact same vein, the conference tournament sucks for a team like Wofford, who absolutely deserves to be in the tournament this year because of their body of work. And I mean, literally one game separated them from the tournament, and that bad game in Greenville this weekend kept them out of the tournament. So hate to see that for Wofford because I like to see the smaller programs that overachieve get in before big time programs who underachieve. But I thought NC State deserved in. I thought Rutgers deserved in. And as far as Carolina and Clemson, unacceptable. But Mark Kingston unquestionably is saved by the buyouts of Will Muschamp and Frank Martin, and Gene Sapakoff wrote a good article in the Post and Courier down here, basically saying, Mark Kingston should thank Muschamp and Martin. Monty Lee's got some splaining to do, I think was kind of the gist of Gene's article down here.
Yeah, Justin basically chiming in with the same thing about the new football and basketball transitions, put the Kingston move on pause, and then Jason noticing the Bucky's cap there. He's a big fan of what you got going. Don't look now, though, Scotty, over your right shoulder. Someone is very confused about what's going on. I said, don't look, man. I love it. This is all part of the live stream. So I was just asked to defend Mark Kingston. I basically said, I don't know if there's a defense, especially when you're the South Carolina head coach, to miss it 2 times in 4 years. But the program simply wasn't at the same place when Mark Kingston took over that it was when Chad Holbrook took over. But again, I don't think that's a defense at all with the University of South Carolina.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, Chad Holbrook's a very good baseball coach. I mean, maybe it didn't work out at the end, but I mean, you saw what he did at the College of Charleston this year. They lose 2 games in the CAA tournament? Yes. And did they miss out on the big dents? Yes. That's also because of where he's at. The CAA wasn't going to get 2 bids this year, so that's where he was at. But that being said, Holbrook has proven. I mean, he did a hell of a job coaching this year. I know Kingston had a lot of pitching injuries, and I've always thought Yeah, I always thought the way of most fans, well, you get off the hook because of injuries. You get off the hook because of injuries. And I had a talk with Fred Jordan down here years ago. I think right when he retired, I had a talk with Fred. Well, he was forced to retire, whatever it may be. I had a talk with Fred Jordan, and I said, what are you proudest of? And he listed off a couple of things, but he said, yeah, here's what I'm really proud of. He goes, I coached at the Citadel for 26 years, and I had 0 Tommy John surgeries in those 26 years. And I think there's something to be said about that. Like, coaches, there are coaches who take pride in how they manage their pitching staffs. And I'm not blaming Mark Kingston for these injuries. It's not his fault. And the game is different now than it was. But there is something to be said about the pride that Fred Jordan took in the fact that 26 years of coaching, he never had a Tommy John. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's Scott Eisberg, WCIV-TV sports director at the ABC affiliate down there. I've known Scotty for years and years. We're going on decades now, I'm guessing.
I think we're talking, 2 decades. I think I interned for you 21 years ago, 21 years ago. Somewhere
2003, I think. So maybe we're on the cusp of
19. Yeah, 19.
There
19.
we go.
There you
we're
go.
There for sure. So you got all this going on. You got Gary Gilmore continuing to run Coastal in the tournament. And then from the Gamecock perspective and your personal perspective, Scotty, being a Landon Powell personal friend and friend of the family and the whole thing, the fact that he's sitting up in North Greenville, just got the old Crusaders in the Division II tournament or Division II College World Series for the first time. It makes for just kind of dramatic theater from the college baseball perspective, don't you think?
Look, if I'm Ray Tanner and I have the money to buy out Mark Kingston, I don't even make another call. I don't even make the call. I just text Landon Powell and say, when could you be here? Like, that's literally, I mean, there is not another person that he should hire than Landon Powell, hands down. I mean, North Greenville used to be the absolute bottom of the barrel in Division II. Bottom of the barrel. And he is just, and he's done it through the transfer portal. He's got a whole lot of guys on the team that are transfers. Well, that's what you're dealing with now at the higher levels as well. I mean, a team like South Carolina is going to hit the transfer portal and hit it hard. Landon Powell does that. There's nobody that loves USC more. There's nobody that means more to the program, and there's nobody that's shown that they can coach and turn around a program more. I would call Landon Powell in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even interview anybody else. I don't think there's anybody else you need to interview for that job. You kind of went out with your off. I guess Mark Kingston's not an off-the-wall hire because he had a pretty good run at South Florida and whatever, Northern Illinois, wherever he was before that, some Illinois directional school. Illinois State, yeah.
But outside the box is where you're going with it, or outside the
box. Yeah, outside the box. I think at this point you go inside the box with Landon Powell. Who, I know you could say he doesn't have Division I experience. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Landon Powell is and I'm not saying that as a Landon Powell friend. I'm saying that as a baseball fan. I mean, the dude bleeds baseball. He was a coach on the field when he played, and there's something to be said about calling a perfect game in the major leagues, and there's a whole lot to be said about his turnaround at North Greenville. It's been pretty amazing.
No doubt about it. It's interesting timing for this thing too, because I thought after the Chad Holbrook era, had Ray Tanner gone to Landon Powell so early on in his career, it would have been a really gutsy / it would have been a tough spot for Landon had he not had instant success. He would not have been setting him up for success. Now we're 5 years removed from that. He has proven that he is a really good coach, even though it's on the Division II level. It's a different type of
And look, Landon Powell has, I think, proven a lot of people wrong. Landon Powell wanted the Charleston Southern job a couple of years ago, and he didn't get it because of lack of experience. He was in the final 2 for the Citadel job 5 years ago when Tony Skoll got it, didn't get it. That one, I don't know if it was experience or as much as that Tony Skoll was a Citadel guy. But, I think athletics directors had some qualms about a guy who was so young into his coaching career. And those are at mid-major schools. So I fully understand why Ray Tanner didn't hire him. Fully understand that. But now at this point, you hire him. I think there's no question that you hire him. And I don't think there's as big of a difference between Division I and Division II baseball as you might think with the transfer portal and everything. I mean, I know the guy, the Powell video that went viral last week with the guy, bringing his parents from Czech Republic. That guy transferred from NC State. I mean, there are a lot of guys on his team who are Division I transfers. And so he's coaching guys at that level right now. It might not have worked out at the Division I level, but he's coaching guys at that level.
Another factor in the Gamecock baseball environment right now, you see a program right across the way that typically had been the basement of the SEC East in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Dominating college baseball. They rolled through the SEC tournament, ended up beating Florida in the finals, and now get the #1 overall seed. Man, I didn't think I was going to see this in my lifetime, Scotty. Just you talk about the impact a single coaching move can have on a single program, and Tennessee is a tremendous example, isn't it?
I think you just look at that Tony Vitello and see how he's engaging, he's funny, he's into it, he's excitable, he recruits well. I mean, I think he's just got the it factor. He's got that it factor. Tennessee is Tennessee's a fertile ground for baseball. It's a big state. You're the only, you're not the only dog in the state because Vanderbilt is a baseball power. They've won national championships. So Vanderbilt is a baseball power, but I don't think you're competing for the same player as Vanderbilt is, but he is just an enigmatic figure and has won. I mean, he has just won. I mean, he's got guys pumping 100 whatever miles an hour on the gun. He is really impressive in what he's done at Tennessee. And I think it shows you, spending some money on a baseball coach and getting the right guy. That really baseball might have always been buried, but now, I mean, every one of these postseason games will be televised. You are on people's screens. You are the front porch of your school for the entire spring season. It's a big deal. It's a big hire. And you get a guy like that, and that's a really solid hire.
No doubt about it, man. And what Tennessee has done has been remarkable. And in college baseball, it's not guaranteed, right? Carolina and Clemson this year. No NCAA tournament. Clemson, no NCAA tournament. I know you're buddies with Monty Lee and the whole situation. How do you see that thing playing out now that it's 2 in a row after they had missed one in, 30-plus years with Jack Leggett?
Yeah, I would think you're nervous if you're Monty. And like we said, I love Monty Lee. I think he's just one of the best people around. Fantastic. But I think he's going to fall in under the, Graham Neff is a new AD, and he's going to want to put his fingerprint on it. And, we've already seen them extend Brad Brunell, and he's not touching Dabo Sweeney. So I think if you're Monty Lee, you got to worry a little bit because you're the next face, if you will, of that school on the athletic side that, if Neff's going to make a move, if he's going to put his thumbprint on it, I would be scared that it is Monty Lee. I still think Monty Lee can coach, but I mean, he had dudes this year. There's no doubt. He had, you had Wagner. I know Grice kind of had a down year, but you look up and down that lineup. He had some absolute horses in that lineup. I'm surprised they didn't win as much as they didn't win. It surprised me because South Carolina, I think you kind of saw it coming when you talk about the injuries that were obvious injuries. I don't think Clemson, I mean, you look at that team and you go, man, that's a really, really talented team that's going to have a lot of guys drafted. And they were really good. I just don't know why they didn't put it together this year. That it surprised me.
Well, the ACC, a very difficult league, but that will, again, never be a viable excuse / explanation for Gamecock or Clemson head baseball coaches. They've been really good leagues for a long, long time.
Absolutely. And then they've been the class of the league for a long, long time. So you don't go from top to bottom. You don't want to go. And look, they were not bottom. But Clemson, the middle is not accepted at Clemson. And I understand that from their fans. And Clemson has put a lot of money into that program. Their facility is as good as any in the country. Both South Carolina and Clemson have great facilities, fantastic facilities. So there's nothing that they could argue about. I mean, they get all the luxuries that a big-time college baseball team should be afforded and is afforded. So yeah, there are no excuses, and I don't think they're going to make an excuse. As Monty Lee said, he expects to be back. He wants to be back, but that's not his decision. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is for Clemson. But as far as a guy who's invested in the state, I mean, Monty Lee is as invested in the state as any coach there is out there. And again, I just don't know who some coaches, just like if you look at Schlossnagel down at Texas A&M. I mean, that dude, it worked. I mean, it worked from one program in the state to another program in the state. It worked. I don't know. I don't know what the issue was. I don't think the talent has gotten worse in our state. I just think that there's a lot of good programs out there, and something's got to be done, and got to be done quick. All right, if those two programs don't switch it up next year, don't change it up next year, and make a run to super regionals, I don't think you see either of them as head coaches in 2024.
Well, it reminds me of Chad Holbrook's last year, right, where they go in and say, no, we're going to do things a lot different, kind of crank up the intensity and the whole thing. And when you have that pressure looming around
it's hard.
A college baseball program, man, at that level, it is very difficult for sure. And again, I think this is less about how, I don't know, easy, for lack of a better word, we think it should be for South Carolina and Clemson to get to the NCAA tournament. This is more about expectation and the bar that was set for so many years. And I get it. College baseball has changed a little bit.
It has changed. Ray Tanner and Jack Leggett did not coach in social media eras. So they were being critiqued, but it wasn't critiqued at the level that they're being critiqued now. And that social media critique, man, it just spreads like wildfire. It's so quick. One guy, tweets something out and he's got a bunch of followers. It just spreads like wildfire. So, I mean, when fans get impatient, it just exacerbates that impatience so quickly on social media. That being said, I think Ray Tanner and Jack Leggett always had pressure on them. There's no doubt, those fans always expected to win, but social media just takes it to a whole nother level. Fans get so impatient and they hide behind screen names and everything. And it's just so hard for any coach that's not winning right now. But I think the telltale sign for any athletics director is if you look at the seats and how many butts are in the seats. And there just simply hasn't been there haven't been the amount of butts in seats that there were at the beginning of Founders Park, for example. I mean, I know there was a commodity of a new ballpark, but the seats just aren't filled like they were back then. And there's no excuse now, and they sell beer there. Like, people can drink at a baseball game now. So we know how Columbia likes to imbibe. I would venture to think that you can't use anything like that as an example. They're going to the minor league game instead. No, you can drink at either one now, so it doesn't really make much of a difference.
I was really surprised. I saw something pop up on social media today. I assume their official numbers that South Carolina actually was number 5 in the country this year for average attendance per home game at somewhere 6,000 plus. That might have been
I saw some of the crowds on I saw some crowds on TV on the internet on those midweek games that were far below 6,000.
No doubt about that. And no doubt the atmosphere is completely different than what it was. I think that's a natural result of lack of winning for sure. I don't blame fans at all. And it creates a really tough environment, I think, now for the program moving forward. I'm also that guy, though, Scotty, that says, hey, be careful what you wish for sometimes. Like the Chad Holbrook crowd, for instance, about, hey, you have to have a change. It's automatically going to mean positive results and the whole thing. That's not necessarily the case either. So it just seems to be a tough spot all the way around in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing good about losing. There's no doubt there's nothing good about losing. And I don't feel bad for Mark Kingston because he's making, $600,000 a year. So I don't feel bad for him either way around. Like,
sure.
He's making a lot of money. The pressure is going to come with that money. I mean, back in the day, could you imagine a college baseball coach making $600K? No. Now you've got what has turned out to be an average coach in the SEC making $600K. So you don't feel bad for the guy. I don't. I think he understands it's probably part of the business. It's part of the deal. So, I think he understands you've got to win. I know he changed things up big time with staff this year. I don't think that made a ton of difference. So now, now the staff has changed. Now the buck stops at him. And I think he has to understand that. It's a completely different staff than it was last year. The buck stops with him. Now, Monty hasn't done the staff overhaul yet, and that's usually the first step in a coaching change is a staff overhaul. We haven't seen that with Monty. I think, same pitching coach with him, all that Andrew C., I think is his name, has been with him all the way through. So maybe you see some staff changes this year from Monty. But I also think he's a pretty loyal guy, and he might end up, he's the kind that would stand by his coach, coaches pretty steadfastly. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And the other question you have is, I would think that like at South Carolina, the writing would be on the wall if you say, "Oh, bring in Landon Powell as your top assistant."
Right.
I think, that ain't happening.
Right.
Something like I read one person, "Well, why don't you bring in Landon Powell to get him acclimated?" Well, that's not going to happen. He's not, that's not going to happen.
Mark, speaking of Landon Powell, says, I've heard people are concerned about his ability to recruit to the SEC since he's used to getting high-level transfers compared to D2 talent, that is. I get that, Mark. I mean, that's only logical, right? If you lead a Division II program, but the best example Landon Powell could use to recruit a high-level guy to South Carolina is himself.
Yep.
Right. He was a massively highly touted prospect and ended up reclassifying and coming to Carolina a little earlier, if I remember back in the day. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to go very far to use an example to go into living rooms with for
no doubt.
those big time high level recruits that South Carolina and Clemson have to have. And they have to have them consistently, and they got to get more of them than they've gotten in the past several years. Because to me, Scotty, that's what it comes down to. You got to have a difference maker, and especially at the times of the year where it comes down to either you're going to turn things up like Florida did this year, or you're going to go the other way and you're going to miss out on the NCAA tournament. Florida is a great example, I think, of a program that you're not guaranteed success, but this year, while they were in the middle of struggling, by about the midway point of the SEC, they figured it out. They had guys step up, and now they're hosting a regional, and we're talking about other programs not even making the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, there's no question. And as far as the Landon Powell, I think, there is a difference in Landon Powell and Mark Kingston. When Mark Kingston walks into a living room in the state of South Carolina, Mark Kingston is probably the same to those people as the head coach at Georgia, the head coach at North Carolina, the head coach at Tennessee, the head coach at Auburn, wherever it may be. Mark Kingston is the same to those people there's not a tremendous pull that he's the head coach of the Gamecocks. If Landon Powell walks into a living room or a kitchen or wherever in South Carolina, and that is a Gamecock family, they distinctly know that is Landon Powell. That is a guy who led us to the College World Series, final game. That is a guy who went to the major leagues and caught a perfect game. And that is a guy that we know and we associate with. And so I don't know outside of the state, although he's from North Carolina and has quite a following in Raleigh. I think that is a difference-making name in the state when you walk into a living room and try to recruit a kid.
Oh, speaking of difference-making names, is he ready to go over there? I don't know. You never know with North Greenville assistant Trey Dyson right now. It looks like he's ready to join the show. I'm not quite sure if I can get a visual confirmation. Oh, yeah, he's ready. Oh, look at that. And they got the trophy ready to go. Well done, Trey. Who you got? That's not Ethan, is it? Has he got Ethan with you?
No. This is Pat Monteith. This kid's a superstar. Third baseman, conference freshman of the year last year, and
great lettuce, great salad up there, man, Pat. I like what you're doing there.
Yeah, he's got great style as well, and this kid's got bat speed for days. He was huge in the super regional.
So, please illustrate for us, narrate for us the trophies you're showing us. So there, Pat, you got your triple fisting. Is that what you're doing?
Right here, we got the regular season conference champion. And then we got the conference tournament, and then we got the regional, super regional. Perfect.
Good call, Scott. Don't drop it. Whatever you do, you got to be very careful there. I think the bandwidth in the only thing going in the North Greenville office right now that's not championship level as we check out all the hardware.
There's Landon. I think we just saw Landon.
Yeah, well, he's assisting with all the hardware. You need more than one pair of hands to do all of that. Is that right, Trey?
Yeah, Landon videos throughout the UFA journey here over the past couple of weeks, and he's, one thing. Tim, are we coming across okay?
It's a little spotty, little not championship
I'm so
quality
sorry.
right now.
I shouldn't have better service at the Hyundai dealership than you've got in a college.
Well, the problem is for whatever reason the Wi-Fi for our school is not allowing the SteamYard thing to come through.
That makes sense. That we are being shut out, being throttled down.
Censored.
Little censored, little restrictions there at North Greenville. It's probably wise on their part. All right, so tell us a little bit about the journey there, Trey. It got a little shaky there, didn't it? Against Columbus State, game 1, no problem. Game 2, a little different. And then game 3 looked pretty good, right?
Yeah. Game 1, good game, very good game. And then Columbus State's a really, really good team. They had six guys coming into it that had double-digit home runs. I think their coach over there, I think he has over 1,000 wins, and they knocked us out of the tournament last year. And so we had a challenge coming into it, but and we had some injuries and stuff like that, but no excuses. And we ended up. We were winning all of game 2, the entire game. The kid right here, Pat Monteith, if you can still see him, he hit a big 3-run home run in the 5th, I think in the 5th inning of game 2.
Wait a second, let's do the usual sports thing. Hey Pat, what kind of pitch did you see on that one? What'd you see, and then how did you react?
It was a changeup, pretty much middle, first pitch, homer to right. So.
What was your head coach telling you before that at bat?
Head coach was telling me sit back on the off speed and hit a homer to right.
Brilliant. That's good stuff. Did he call a timeout right before your at bat to actually go out on the field and tell you that, or was that in the dugout?
He did not. It was in the dugout.
Oh, okay. Good stuff. Sorry to interrupt. Excellent sports talk breakdown. Back to Trey with the.
Did your head coach interject at some point during that meeting? I caught a perfect game one time.
Is that Eisberg? Who is that?
Yeah, that's Eisberg. It's a distinct voice, no doubt.
Yeah. So Scott obviously knows Landon pretty well.
I didn't know that was Scott on there. Is that Scott Eisberg?
It
What's up, Scotty?
How are you?
I
have my hat. I was wearing my hat yesterday. My North Green. I went Buc-ee's today, but I was wearing my.
I gotta get you a new one. This is our new gray one right here. So
ooh, that's a good looking one. Yeah, the black one looks good too. I wore the black one. I wore it yesterday.
So people don't know, but Scott and I go way back. My wife and Scott were in school all the way through together in broadcast school. So I've known Scott since probably freshman year of college.
Yes, long time.
And you still talk to him. And
look where he is now. He's turned into a superstar.
I mean,
I'm sitting at a Hyundai service thing with my wife's car. That's where I am right now.
And coming in strong, solid for sure. Landon, I've seen the quote a couple of times that this team, when the back's against the wall, fights and the whole thing. Is that what you want to relay most about the history-making squad you got at North Greenville going to the first College World Series?
Yeah, they're a special group. I mean, coaches, it's a cliche. Coaches say all the time that this is a special team, special group. And this is a special team. This is these guys don't give up. They don't give in. They've had their back against the wall so many times. I mean, and the way they won it on Saturday with losing the first game on a walk-off with their 2-run lead, needing 2 outs to go to the World Series, and we get walked off. Then they come back and score 6 in the first, the next game, which is just kind of sick if you think about it. These guys compete, man. They love to play. They love to win. They love each other. It's they're probably not the most talented team I've coached the last 4 or 5 years. They're really talented, but we've had some really, really good teams. But this team is the best team, and they know how to win. And so I've loved coaching them. and I'm excited to go coach him some more. 4 more wins, and let's see what happens. Right, Patty?
I got to ask,
Oh, yeah.
Landon, how much more special does it make it going home? Like to go to your home for a World Series? I mean, how wild is that for you?
Yeah, I was telling somebody else yesterday, like, this is about our team and about our players, but selfishly for me, this is pretty cool. I grew up literally a mile and a half away from the USA Baseball Complex. When I was a kid, that was a bunch of farmland, and I used to take my brother and my brother and I and our friends, we would take our 4-wheelers and go ride all over that farmland where the fields are now. So, I mean, about whatever it's been, 12, 15 years ago, they built the USA Baseball Complex on that old farm. And I mean, I grew up on that dirt, and I used to fish on ponds right there. And so for me to be able to go home and be there, all my friends from high school and family and people in that area, I'm real excited about that. I mean, the hotel we're staying at, we just got our hotel information yesterday. It's like half a mile from my grandparents' house. It's in the mall where I used to go on dates with girlfriends in middle school and high school and stuff. So this is like a real strange situation for me, but I couldn't be more excited to go back up to that area, and it's home. That's where I grew up. So
you and Trey reliving any of those old feelings at all through your players right now back in 2002 when Ray Tanner cashed his first ticket to the College World Series?
We talked about it in the office Saturday after we won. It was just like, how cool was that? We have a photo in our office over here. Trey could probably show it to you in a minute. It's a big blown up photo of the dog pile when we won in 2002, beat Miami down 4 to start the inning and come back and win to go to Omaha. And that's the first time in Coach Tanner's career that he went to Omaha. So we kind of, Trey and I and all our teammates kind of busted that door down for Coach Tanner. And, we were sitting in the office after Saturday saying, our players just busted the door down for us, and how cool that is. And now we have that perspective of how Coach Tanner felt in that moment. And, it was definitely a special feeling.
Will Allison be on TV more than you this time as well, 18 years later?
If the producers are smart.
If the broadcast team is smart, they would put her on TV a lot more than me. If she was the star of the College World Series, like 02, 03, 04.
I've never seen somebody get more airtime in my life. Never seen more airtime than that.
Was it her and Kevin Malillo's sister? Is that right? Was that all part of the group back
You are
then?
correct. Yeah, you are correct.
That's what I thought.
Good memory, Tim. Good memory.
So,
and then the second stars were the old creepy guys sitting behind them, keeping an eye out.
So as you were talking, Landon, about your team, and then even about that 0-2 team that came back against Miami, the Miracle of Miami, and the grit is the word that comes to mind. Can you coach grit, man, or do you just have to recruit guys that already have it?
Well, I think you definitely recruit. That's something I look for in recruiting. I'm looking for winners. I'm looking for kind of that blue collar look, and like a guy like Monteith sitting right next to me. When I recruited him, I noticed that he was kind of a competitor. He was a competitor. He was a dog. If I talked to him about beating him in horse, it fired him up. If I said I'm gonna beat you in ping pong, it fired him up. I'm looking for that look in their eye that they will not lose. They're gonna figure out a way to win. I was that way. Trey was that way. All great competitors have that kind of, I guess, psychotic feeling that they can't lose. It's not an option. And so I try to recruit that. But then once they get here, it's part of everyday life. I mean, we're very competitive every day in practice. We're competitive around the locker room and the offices. It's something that we just make part of the fiber of our program. And so I do think that we do coach that grit. But you got to also have the want to already in you to be that kind of guy. And that's really the secret ingredient, I think, to this team. Are they the biggest, strongest, fastest team? Do we have the best pitch? I mean, yeah, we're good, but we're not probably the best at any of those things. But these dudes have grit. They have heart. They don't know how to quit. And they're never out of it. They can be down 5 in the 9th, and they feel like they can still win. And there's not many teams that have that mentality.
Can the Long Island native accept that as a definition of grit, or do you have to go to the actual food, sir?
No. I was going my cousin Vinny if anyone didn't pick it up, but I went with the my cousin Vinny line. It was low hanging fruit, but it's okay.
You're no longer a Ute, Scotty. You're no longer a Ute. You can't get away with that.
You've lived in the South longer than you have in the North, Scotty.
I have, and you know why I'm here at Hyundai? Because I got mud in the tires, right? I got mud in the tires.
How's the positive traction in your tires these days?
I don't know. I hope that's not my car. That's sounding the alarm right now. I'm about to find out.
So, Landon, I know you got things to do, man. You guys are busy this week and the whole thing. Now it's a matter of balancing the serious attitude you take on the business trip and valuing the whole thing. I imagine you go back on your personal experience as a player to rely on how you're going to coach these guys here in the next few days.
For me, when I think about Omaha, when Trey and I got to go and I got to spend those years there, I just remember how fun it was and how, like, our coaches really kind of let us be loose and have fun and enjoy it. And it's a celebration of your season. You're still there to compete, but it's for these guys, it needs to be an incredibly fun experience. So that's my plan going into it is, it's going to be a lot less stressful, I would say. And we're going to set up some fun activities on our off days, but when that umpire says play ball, we're going to compete like we always do. And I know that the team I don't have to make them do that. That's how they are. They're just going to start competing as soon as that umpire says play ball. But my goal is to keep them loose and have fun on all the other activities outside of the games. So.
And returning to the homeland to do it, man, I can't imagine everything you got to balance. So it's personally and professionally. Thanks for hopping in here, even though you might have gotten roped into it by Trey and our guerrilla style show. When I heard
Scott Eisberg's voice, I figured I had to see his face. I want to make sure I said, hey, he's my guy. So
you do all the things that low country viewers don't do. That they hear my voice and it's the opposite. Go make dinner.
All right, good catching up with y'all. Thanks for having Trey.
Good luck, Landon. Yeah,
absolutely. Good luck to you guys. North Greenville. Look at that. This is just a normal day in the office for you, Trey. Is that how it works?
Yeah, usually, I'll come up with some grand idea and then Landon, he'll come over here, he'll snatch it right out of my hands like he did today. But, that's what a good assistant coach does. He makes the head coach look good. That's what I try to do, true team guy. And it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And don't forget, making the players look good as well with Pat over there and the hardware showing it all off, man. For you, how does this compare to 20 years ago?
The feelings are just the same. You've got pride and as a player, and you got pride as a coach that you want to do. You want to win. You want to prove to the world that you can, win as a coach now. And like Landon said, it's an everyday grind as far as like creating a winning type environment. And it's just really fulfilling. It's really fulfilling, especially since we had to deal with some kind of tough injuries. It makes it even more fulfilling.
Yeah. It was your catcher that went down. He still hadn't gotten an AB yet. He hadn't talked his way back into the lineup yet, has he? John Michael Fail?
Not quite yet, but we'll see. We'll see how he does over the course of this week. Maybe some Kirk Gibson heroics in there, possibly, but we've been winning without him. Heck, we might not need him at this point.
Hey, Pat is still there beside you. I'm wondering from a player's perspective, how sick are you guys hearing Omaha stories from your coaches who have been there and done that?
Heard all the stories, but no, it's cool. I like it. I like listening.
Scott, as a professional skeptic in the media, you believe that answer? You buying that or not? Did that eye roll give it away?
I believe there's two people in that office that can make him run gassers right now. So he's going to be cool with whatever it may be.
I'll tell you, Scott mentioned the perfect game story with Landon. Landon is very proud of that moment, and rightfully so. Sure. So that kind of sticks around with him. But I'll tell you what, Landon has got stories. You hear a lot of the same stories. He repeats a lot of the same stories a lot, but he comes up with gems like out of nowhere that you wouldn't believe, like how we met Alex Rodriguez or something, hanging out with who was it? Cameron Diaz or something like that.
Cameron Diaz and A-Rod at the Black Sands Beach in Hawaii.
Yeah, stuff like that. You hear stuff like that on a daily basis. Here's the photo.
Did Cameron Diaz date Alex Rodriguez?
Yeah, I think that was it for a little while.
I did not realize that.
Oh, good stuff there.
Great.
Actually holding up. Is that who we got on top?
There's old Trey here in the middle.
Yeah, let's get some names.
Down there. There's the young stuff.
There's Blake Taylor down there on the bottom. Demetric over there on the right. Tim Seaton, the right field replacement over there in the top right. And then it's hard to pick out.
Where's my neighbor Drew? Where's my neighbor Drew?
Is Meyer in the mix?
Drew's probably in the bottom somewhere.
Well, he's a fast guy, right? He got there quickly from shortstop.
Oh, there he is. I see him right now. He's at the bottom. He's Blake's left leg is kind of covering up his number, but he's at the bottom there.
I always like the most random. What about the bat boy? Is that one of Toman's?
Hey, that bat boy right here.
Yeah,
Corey.
He is now the assistant AD at Western Carolina.
Wow.
That's how old we are.
Fantastic, man. And at the Sarge.
All right.
Oh, good stuff with the Circle K advertisement. You got to get that. I imagine that hardware was weighing down on Pat for a while. Got to get them up and moving. You guys working out anytime soon, Trey? What you got going there?
Yeah, we got practice at 11, and then we've been doing a movie. Landon's been written out a movie theater during the postseason. Before the conference tournament, we won that. Before the regional, we won that. Before the super regional, we won that. And now you just got to stick with what's been working. We're going to see Top Gun today.
Oh, yeah, you got to see Top Gun, yeah.
I have – Scotty, have you seen it?
No, I was actually going to – like the movie theater is like a quarter mile from here. I was actually going to walk down and see the first showing of it today while my car's getting fixed, but I jumped on your show instead, so I'll have to do it another day.
The highest compliment this show's ever gotten. Trey, if you guys don't come up with a vlog breakdown of Top Gun, your movie review, then you're not doing it right as an assistant coach. You got to make that happen for us.
I haven't heard one bad review of it yet. Not one.
Yeah, I mean, I like to go into movies not knowing anything about it. So y'all have already kind of ruined it a little bit for me by saying it's that good, but it's okay.
You're welcome.
Here's a spoiler. It involves airplanes. How about that?
Sounds good. But no, I do want to bring up one point I was thinking about. We were talking about losing our catcher, John Michael Fail, who's just 81 RBIs on the year. But Pat Monteith, that kid that was sitting there, Landon was talking about the type of players he likes to recruit here, those competitive players. One thing that kind of drives a kid like Pat crazy is hearing about how good John Michael Fail is all the time. And so I'm like, okay, Pat, well, good. Well, you've got a chance to do something about it. And so Pat actually went into the 3-hole, which is where John Mike hits. And he did something about it. So he's had a great postseason, and he really made a name for himself. It's so fun. And, me having the media background and even at Carolina, just loving to doing the interviews and stuff like that after the game. Got a good group of kids. And my whole message to them before the game is get to the podium after the game. That's your whole goal. If you want to have a good life, then you will be on the podium with head coach Landon Powell at the end of the game. And it's worked out a couple of times.
Trey, didn't you do the like the bus thing, like the behind the scenes on the bus?
Oh yeah, you mean it in Omaha?
Yeah, in Omaha, you did the bus thing.
I'll never forget it. Yeah, you were the tour guide on the bus, the College World Series broadcast. They busted in, and then hey, I'm Trey Dyson, and this is the bus, and you do the whole thing.
I remember that.
20 years later, here you are.
Yeah, I was always the guy that they would go to. Even if I didn't have a good game, people like you guys would know that I wouldn't give like a canned response, So I was always getting some media attention, which of course, I mean, who doesn't love that?
Right. And now it's paid off into a tremendous Tim Hill unrestricted free agent show appearance on a Tuesday during the end of May, right before history for the College World Series. First time ever for North Greenville in Division II. Congratulations, man. Keep us up to date. I want to hear your review on Top Gun, and make sure you keep these guys loose. It seems like that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah. You know how we operate. That's how we feel like we play the best, and especially in big games. So you gotta have fun.
I wonder, where does Landon Powell procure a movie theater? Like just to get a movie theater?
I mean, Scott, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but did you know that Landon Powell caught a perfect game in the big leagues?
Yeah, I know. I guess that opens you up to movie theater rentals and Travelers Rest, or I have no idea.
Exactly. Yeah,
you got a perfect game card. He's like, we're gonna take this theater now.
Yeah.
No, they were like, oh, well, Dallas Braden already got the theater, so you're secondary in this.
No,
Good
but that
stuff.
was a lot of fun today, and we probably inspired Landon right now. I guarantee you that brain is jogging some memories of. Hopefully, we'll be here, and we're going back to his hometown area. We are going to be in for a treat. We are going to be in for a treat.
Take some
I
notes.
want a vlog on going back to the mall. I want you to take me to the Claire's where he purchased the plastic engagement ring for the girlfriend at the mall.
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
That's all you can ask. Trey Dyson, fantastic stuff from the office there in North Greenville. Thanks, Trey.
Thanks, guys. Scott, good to see you.
You too.
How about that, man? You can't make that stuff up. And that was just a kind of a logical extent. That's how it works on the show. If we're actually going to talk about Landon Powell being in the mix and the whole coaching situation at Carolina, then he pops right up with the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah, we pumped his tires for about 25 minutes. We pumped his tires for, and then he shows up on there.
I love that he was actually holding the picture there. He went and grabbed it from the office. Dog pile back in 2002, man. There's something about baseball guys that I don't think they can explain it. I don't think nerds like us can explain it, Scotty, when it comes to those moments like he was talking about. They had just got devastated on Saturday in game 2, right? They're on the cusp, 2 outs away, 2 runs up in the 9th inning. This is the number 1 seed in the country. They don't lose those games.
Right.
And Columbus State
it's amazing. Back. Those amazing the baseball guys, and they remember such specifics of the stories. It's incredible. I mean, I see Drew like every weekend at our neighborhood pool. I see him all the time, and there's always a different conversation about some moment from 2002 that you're just like, man, how do you remember it so vividly? But every little memory is a different. It's just a little thing that they remember. I mean, I think it just shows how much you're taking it in when you're there. Like you take in every little moment of it. You're taking in. It's a pretty cool thing.
So to me, it's the combination of being kind of a next level competitor and also that technical knowledge. Like, yeah, it was very clear. Pat got told before he went up to the plate, hey, look off speed, go to right field. That's what happens. So you got to have that. Then plus you got to have a little something extra, and you got to have things go your way this time of year, man.
Yeah, no doubt. And it helps when you just have baseball guys, like when you look at that Gamecock team from 20 years ago, how many baseball guys were on that team that are, had went into coaching? I mean, Landon and Trey and Drew coached for a little while, and Brian Busher coached, and John Kutlangus coached, and how many guys on that team went on to coach? It just shows how baseball was truly, bred into them. That there's a different mentality when you're a baseball coach, and then so many of those guys had that little switch in their brain that they could turn on.
Is there anything better than college baseball postseason, man? You've been around a lot.
Stanley Cup playoffs are pretty darn good.
You were going to turn it to hockey. There was just a
Stanley Cup.
We got 53 minutes into the show before we were able to let you turn it to hockey. All right,
Stanley Cup playoffs are pretty good.
Break it down last night, because I tried to watch Game 7 and it was already a stinker by the time I turned it on, and the Hurricanes were getting just smacked at home, and that was more depressing than anything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Rangers scored 2 power play goals early, and so that was kind of like a surmountable deficit that the Canes had. But once their goalie, he was their backup goalie. Ronta was their backup goalie. It looked like he pulled a hamstring or whatever, but he was out. So then you went to a third-string goalie, and it was just a barrage of shots from the Rangers. I mean, you kind of saw that happening once the third-string goalie was in. But 2 great series. One starts tonight, Colorado and Edmonton, and then the other series, the Rangers and the Lightning. So 2 great series, and one starts tonight, one starts tomorrow night. So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
That's your obligatory hockey breakdown from Scott Eisberg from the North Charleston Hyundai Center there. What's the word on the car, by the way? I should have started.
I don't know. I should go in there and find out, right? They're probably going to tell me what the damage is when I go in there.
Yeah, are you delaying the inevitable right now?
Well, no, I'm just talking. I don't think they know that I'm outside, so they probably have to give me the rundown for me to go approve or deny what they're gonna do. So turn down any air filters and say yes to any things that are gonna make the car not run.
Yeah, that better for you that you're dealing with a car situation than an at-home air conditioning situation. That's what I got.
Yeah. No doubt about that. Yes,
Came home
completely
last
a different
night,
situation.
upstairs 80 degrees and downstairs good. Yeah, I want a great one to come home to, but we made it
Not a
through.
great one.
We'll see where that goes. So if you want to go check on the situation, feel free to do that, man.
We'll do it.
I'm great to have you hang out as long as you like, but thanks for popping on this morning on location and then reconnecting with your buddy Landon Powell.
There you go. Appreciate it. Thanks, Tim.
Sky Eisberg, ladies and gentlemen, is only he can do from the North Charleston Hyundai dealership. Can't make this stuff up. And then, as only a live stream internet show apparently can do, we're talking about the college baseball situation around the Gamecocks with Mark Kingston to remain in charge, right? And it had a lot of Gamecock fans, and I think defensively so. I get it. They were not happy on Friday when that news popped out because missing 2 NCAA tournaments in the last several years, that doesn't happen at Carolina. Clemson dealing with that now back-to-back missed NCAA tournaments. Still no word. I think a large question mark looming over Monty Lee's future with that program, despite clearly being well thought of in the state of South Carolina and he's still the last coach of the College of Charleston to take that program to the postseason. So with all of that being there, with Landon Powell and North Greenville cashing their ticket to the first ever Division II College World Series in school history over the weekend, with Landon being a former Gamecock player under Ray Tanner and what we talked about back in 02, 3, and 4. He was on all 3 of those teams that went to the College World Series back in the day. It seemed to, from the outside looking in, seemed to be the next move, right? If you move on from Mark Kingston, you go right to Landon Powell. Like Scott said, don't even make another call, just send a text. I was thinking, as he says it, just send the text 2 letters with the question mark in. Again, it didn't make complete sense. It didn't make the most sense. It would have been a very risky and highly criticized move, I think, had Ray Tanner had gone to a much younger Landon Powell, a much more unproven Landon Powell after the Chad Holbrook era. And also what really kept it in the family, right? That was one of, it's maybe Drew Meyer number 1 and Landon Powell number 2, or 1A and 1B when you're talking about big-time recruits coming to the University of South Carolina when they did for Ray Tanner and how it changed the program. Like Justin Smoke and Reese Havens, obviously big-time recruits as well several years later, but this was after they had broken down the door, like Landon mentioned, and gone to the College World Series for the first time in Ray Tanner's tenure. And Tanner was a guy that commented publicly he was beginning to wonder if he could make it happen, if it was him, if he was the problem after the team went 50-6 in 2000, number 1 overall national seed, and didn't make it happen in a super regional series at home against Louisiana Lafayette. But that 2002 deal, the comeback against Miami, down 4 runs going in the final inning and the whole thing, and now to see that story taking place 20 years later, and to see Landon Powell in the coach's seat, Trey Dyson, assistant coach, is it's surreal in a lot of ways for a lot of us who lived that first one, right? And now to see that the news that Mark Kingston is going to remain with the Gamecocks, it creates a really interesting environment headed into the 2023 season. But that's what it is. And we don't know what it will be for Clemson, but it's certainly going to be, if Monty Lee remains, a similar type environment for him, right? It is a win or go home scenario from the coaching standpoint. We see it all the time in sports, and we love it, right? And that's, again, what makes college baseball here the last several weeks so great. Unfortunate for the lower tier teams, a lot like college basketball for me. You play the entire regular season and you play it really, really well. College of Charleston, a great example from the baseball perspective, regular season wise. And then you don't get it done in the conference tournament and you're absolutely penalized for it. But the easy answer is you got to have the other teams in your conference get better, or you got to schedule better teams. And I get it from those teams' perspective. There ain't a lot of people picking up your phone calls or wanting to play you midweek games a lot of times. Maybe Charleston a bit of the exception. We saw them beat Clemson recently. man, it's a difficult spot for those teams. I just can't imagine a program like Wofford that won 42 games, maybe even a better example than Charleston this year. A pretty high RPI, but nationally, just not the profile. You want to go the next step up, right? NC State didn't have the chance to compete for the national championship or continue on to the College World Series because of COVID issues. And then this year, a pretty solid resume, certainly one comparable or a little bit better than Ole Miss from a Power 5 perspective, and not it. Hurts, man. There's a lot of celebrating, a lot of really happy offices like the one we just saw at North Greenville. 8 of them in Division II only. 64 programs in Division I baseball moving on the NCAA tournament, but I wouldn't put all of them across the board are happy right now. Ole Miss being a number 3 seed, I think in their regional, not necessarily happy, relieved. And we've talked to former Gamecock assistant Stuart Lake many times talking about that's what it is at South Carolina. It's not a celebration when you win, typically. It is a relief. And maybe not to the heights in the postseason where then you can actually start celebrating. And Landon Powell was talking about that. Trey Dyson talking about that environment back in the day when it was historic for Ray Tanner heading to the College World Series for the first time in 2002. A little bit different, but yeah, Troy says NC State got hosed again. And it makes it's impossible not to wonder if it's a personal thing, right? If the way that NC State reacted last year to the COVID situation had some sort of impact to how they were being talked about this year on the NCAA baseball tournament committee. I know ACC people saying that the lack of an ACC representative on the tournament committee clearly hurt them. They are good enough to win it all. I don't know about that. They almost won it all in the ACC, right? Ended up going to the final game, and North Carolina beat them up pretty good yesterday in that final game in the ACC championship. But tough situation for NC State baseball for sure. But they're not the only ones. And I guess from the baseball perspective, I have a little bit more empathy because it's so many games, right? And I feel like to some degree you prove even more than a college basketball team that rolls through the regular season because you play more games, right? You've won more games. You've established that consistency that much more. And baseball, maybe I value consistency even more than basketball. Basketball, typically, the more athletic, the better team typically wins. Baseball, that's not necessarily true, right? Typically, I guess, but it's such a strange game, and you can get one pitcher with a really good performance, or just your team gets hot a game or two and strings together some hits or gets some bases, some bounces to go its way. Then maybe you win some games. The best team, I think, wins more often than not. Football number 1, basketball number 2, and then I put baseball number 3. So to have built up the wins in the resume and then to not get in, whew, that's rough, man. And also to know just how much fun these guys have this time of year. You see it on their faces, right? The North Greenville guys, just how much fun they're having. And to see it every year now more on ESPN and regionals and super regionals, and certainly in the College World Series, just to see all the fun those guys are having, man. To me, that's college sports at its finest. And baseball certainly is changing, right? It is continuing to get more and more exposure and maybe, for lack of a better word, corporatized, right? They do play the College World Series now at TD Ameritrade Park instead of Rosenblatt Stadium. So it has gone that way, but I don't think college baseball will ever, at least I hope not, will ever lose its luster and its feel, right? It's almost, I've described it and heard it described as more of a cult sport out there, right? This is not the discussion on the major national shows today. I understand that ESPN does put some money and invests in it and certainly promotes it to some degree, but nowhere close to other things, even this time of year where it dominates the headlines or the the perspective from for a lot of us in this area of the country, the Southeast, with 9 SEC teams in, 9 ACC teams in, so 18 of the 64. I was going to say that's 1/4, but that's more than 1/4, right? More than a quarter of this year's NCAA tournament teams coming from the ACC and SEC. And you even have a team like NC State, certainly, that has the resume, the argument that they should have been in as well, another one. Or maybe you take out Ole Miss and you put them in. That's what this time of year always is, the post-Memorial Day breakdown of NCAA baseball tournaments, where we are. But where we're not used to being is not having live baseball in the state of South Carolina. A lot of times we've seen 3 regionals hosted in this state with South Carolina, Clemson, and Coastal Carolina. This year it seems like North Carolina kind of took the cake there. You got the University of North Carolina and East Carolina both hosting. I think 5 teams total from the state of North Carolina getting in. And just one from South Carolina is just different, man. But it has been a different year in college baseball when you're talking about just perennially going through that thing, with Tennessee completely dominating with 53 wins right now after winning the SEC tournament against Florida and the outright regular season title as well by, I think, 6 games over anybody else. Been quite the run. 1999, by the way, is something to remember moving forward when you're talking about college baseball. And we won't make this show all college baseball, but it's pretty close, right? 1999 is the last time the number 1 overall seed went on to win the College World Series, which makes that the entire tournament, and especially the College World Series, that much more fascinating to me, right? It was those 2000 Gamecocks, the first number 1 seed in this string now to not go on and win the College World Series. And even those great teams back 2010, 11, 12, Carolina didn't go as the number 1 seed going into the College World Series or the NCAA tournament, excuse me, and go on and win that thing. So that's a crazy stat. If you ever want to explain college baseball to someone, just use that one stat. 1999, the last time the number 1 overall seed's gone on to win the College World Series. So that's where we sit with that. Hope you had a good weekend. You guys would like to weigh in now, would certainly be happy to hear if you have seen Top Gun. And I'm glad that came up, because I don't know if I remember a movie, certainly not a sequel, but just a movie overall as we sit here in 2022 that's gotten so many good reviews. Maybe it's, Mark says he's hoping to go to the theater this Friday to catch the hype. I mean, that's what I was going to ask Scott about, his question about renting out a movie theater, the way the North Greenville team has done it here recently. I can't tell you the last time I went to, I can tell you actually, Toy Story 3, I think, is the last time I went to the movie theater, which was, if not last summer, maybe the summer before. Movie theaters just aren't what they are. You know, so many things get released just straight to digital, and you can watch them at home. So this Top Gun thing is tremendous, I think. And the way that Landon Powell, just to go back on the baseball thing that Troy's saying, 2000, in my opinion, was South Carolina's best team. Well, they proved it from the regular season standpoint, right? You don't go 50-6 without proving that you're an amazing team, be the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, and that's why in 2010, South Carolina wins the national championship, but Ray Tanner all through this thing says, I don't know if this is my best team. I don't think this is my best team from a talent perspective. His line back in the day was, you can't just roll out the gloves and expect to win. But we did see some obvious signs that team, it might actually have been his best team eventually. I mean, Whit Merrifield, 17 out of his last 18, I think he's gotten hits in the big leagues here recently. He's definitely turned things around after a slow start. Jackie Bradley Jr. back with the Red Sox this year and has been there forever. Michael Roth was on that team, got time in the major leagues. I mean, you can go down the line. Christian Walker, I think, had the lead or is tied for the lead most home runs so far this season. I think he is 12th the other day. So an example maybe of guys that kind of came into their own, were young in 2010 and hadn't proved it yet, but certainly have gone on to amazing baseball careers. Not that there weren't those kind of guys on the 2000 team, but just not to the level of those later teams. Jason says, last time I went to the theater, Aquaman. It's been a while. Wow, that is a while. Never saw Aquaman. Was a big fan of Aquaman growing up, but never saw that one. Haven't seen a lot of just non-kid movies here recently with the 9, 7, and 2-year-old. But the Top Gun thing, I am fascinated by. First of all, Tom Cruise might be the most interesting man in my lifetime for so many different ways, right? Number one on my list is the religious aspect of Tom Cruise and everything that has come out about what is that even called? Help me out with that. It's there's science in the name, right? I forget what it is. But it was who I knew from Saved by the Bell, Leah Remini, who kind of exposed all of that thing, and that was a mess. I saw a documentary, and I know she's done a show, and Scientologist. Sorry if you're just yelling at it. Thank you, Mark. That was close to the correct spelling too. He got it right on the stars there. Troy says he doesn't even remember the last time he's been to a theater. Yeah, I wonder if I'm going to have to, well, maybe my kids will have to tell the 2-year-old about movie theaters, because my kids at 9 and 7 have been to the movie theater a few times, handful of times. I don't know how much longer we're going to keep going with that thing. I hope so. I'm a fan. Seeing things that I think all of us who go to sporting events, live sports, and take it in with an audience understand that's a different experience than just sitting at home watching it on TV or just sitting with one other person. Like the premiere of a comedy where you got a packed movie theater and everybody is laughing is just something that sticks with you. I think it's something that we all need to some degree. Just like sports, man. 70,000, 80,000 plus witnessing the same thing. It's a special deal. Speaking of Toy Story, he says, I'll probably take my daughter to see the new Buzz Lightyear movie. Oh, I didn't even know there was one. Thanks for the heads up there, Mark. Good to know. So I'll always rail on the Top Gun scene with the beach volleyball. It's one of the worst scenes in the history of movies. Being a bit of a volleyball nerd, just awful, right? Anybody who hits the volleyball with the fist like that, and play it in jeans, and come on, man. But the actual movie, a classic of my generation. I don't know what else I'd put up there. Let's go 80s classic movies right now, since this has come up organically. I try to stay away from just the completely contrived lists and that type of deal going into a show, because it just seems a little fake, right? The other day, the Fill in the Blank Friday was born completely organically. Just came up in my head. I had the idea after that noon game was set for Carolina and Georgia to get some fill in the blank answers for September noon games at Williams-Brice Stadium and got some great answers from you guys and some great memes too on social media. You can go check it out on the Twitter there, Tim Hill UFA. Good stuff. But if I'm going just off the top of my head from the 80s, top 5 movies, Top Gun's got to be in there, right? I don't know if anybody has a top 5 80s classics without Top Gun being in there. I think it's got to be in there. Then off the top of my head, I think Goonies has to be in there as well. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking maybe Gremlins too as gimmies. Then I'm running out pretty quick. You guys want to help with that? Top 5 80s classics. But then I think I'm completely scarred from the Dumb and Dumber sequel that took forever to get made. Apparently there were a lot of issues and kind of starts and restarts, and I think Jim Carrey started doing it once and then quit. And I read an article about it one time, and it was a mess. But then the actual movie, pretty brutal, and just such a letdown of an absolute classic. And that one was in the 90s, Dumb and Dumber. Terminator, not sure, 80s or 90s. I would guess early 90s, not positive. Rambo, that's a great one. I think that might have to be on the list, but I never saw that growing up as a kid. I think that was a rated R one, right? So I might even be going PG-13-ish classic 80s movies from a guy who was born in 1977 and had highly monitoring parents of that type of content. Yeah, Porky's the same way there, Jason. So those neither one of those make my list. Predator, same deal. Another rated R deal. Yeah, it blew your mind, really? I mean, Top Gun was pretty PG, if I remember it correctly. The scale has certainly changed since the 80s, and I guess that has too. All right, so I'm going Top Gun, Goonies, Gremlins, as maybe we'll just go top 3 80s classics there. But then you can go all kinds of separate ways there. But that's what pops out in my mind. And then now apparently the way they've done this thing, I like the concept, right? That Maverick comes back now as an instructor, and I've just seen the trailer and just seen some social media reaction as well. Apparently, from a father-son perspective, it is fantastic with, I think, the Goose storyline and Iceman. Not to spoil it for you, again, this is just what I've seen in social media stuff, apparently. And I think maybe even Val Kilmer put it out in his social media that happy to make his return as Iceman or something like that. And Kilmer, oh yeah, Karate Kid, thank you. I love that the anonymous YouTube account that demanded that I defend Mark Kingston at the beginning of this program has now chimed in with Karate Kid. Going full circle, full spectrum, love it. Yeah, that's number, I would put that actually above Gremlins, maybe even above Goonies. So Top Gun 1, Karate Kid 2, Goonies 3, that's a strong 3. Then maybe Gremlins. Looking for number 5. Field of Dreams is great, but I don't consider it necessarily an 80s classic. Was that 89 maybe? That's almost timeless in a lot of ways. The other ones seem more dated to me than Field of Dreams for some reason. I think it might be the musical montages. Karate Kid's the best one, right? You're the best around. You never have it. I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but it just pops in my head. Is that him riding his bike too? So it was 89. Oh, and E.T. I think that's a great 5. Great 5 classic 80s PG-13 or less. Top Gun. No. How dare? Oh no! How dare you enter the Dirty Dancing into the sweepstakes? Indiana Jones. I might take out Gremlins for Indiana Jones. Yeah, Stripes is another rated R one that I didn't see until the 90s, I don't think. All right, so let's break this down. Number 1, I'm going to write it down. 80s classics, top 5. Top Gun's got to be there. Then I'm going Karate Kid, I love it. Then I'm going Goonies. Then what else we got? We got in the discussion, it seems to me that Indiana Jones and E.T., I think they knock out Gremlins. Staying power. I'm going to go Indiana Jones 4 and E.T. at 5. So Indiana Jones, a good example of the typical arc of movies, right? Instant sequels. The question coming in from York, are there any movies where the sequel was better? The classic line there is The Godfather Part 2, right? Oh yeah, we're not getting into Star Wars here. Absolutely not. Not a fan. Mark, how dare you, sir? Never seen Indiana Jones. Might be dated by now, but man, back in the day, Harrison Ford, tough to mess with. Oh, and you're the one that mentioned it? Or came up with a suggestion, and then maybe, okay, maybe the insecurity of never having seen it. Of course, Major League and Naked Gun, great movies. I just don't think of them as 80s classics. Jason says Princess Bride. I get it. Just not quite there for me. None of those are going to knock out my top 5. Again, Major League, I know was rated R. Naked Gun, I think was a PG-13 one, but I'm not going with the parody as a classic. So Karate Kid 2, I remember going to the theater for that one too. Another pretty traditional arc. I think they ended up making 3 of them. Karate Kid 2 I thought was pretty good. Mighty Ducks 2 was a fantastic sequel in for Mark. Even working in the Scott Eisberg obligatory hockey reference as well. Never I never actually saw any of those all the way through, the Mighty Ducks ones. Maybe that's my hockey aversion revealing itself. Right. And I was bummed about Major League too as well. And that was all right, but man, tough to capture the magic. But apparently, like this has never been done, I don't think, to have a sequel of a classic that is so far down the line. I mean, we're doing the math. I'm pretty sure it's 86 Top Gun came out. We're talking 26 years later. Or am I doing that math wrong? Don't tell me it's 36 years later. It's 36 years later. Holy moly. Carrying the one is difficult. Troy, Crocodile Dundee 2, better than 1, in my opinion. That's another one that would make just outside. That would probably make my top 10 of 80s classics. And again, if going with that, hey, I'm seeing it as pretty much a 10-year-old in the 80s. I get it. If you guys are a bit of a different age, like Poltergeist would never. I get it from a movie perspective that makes the list, but no, was not watching that thing at that age. I think I did ended up seeing it maybe 15 years later after it was made, something like that, when I was in my 20s. But now to have this thing redone so many years later, so many decades later, to have at least one, or I guess a couple of the few original characters in there, and a big part of it, good for the Top Gun people. I'm hoping that this is not just, and I don't think you can get away with that on social media these days with the easy negative bend that is social media, the easy way to go to, thumbs down, wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It's so easy to do. How dare you, sir? Troy going Rocky 3, your favorite Rocky movie? See, Rocky 4 I remember seeing, and I believe that was late 80s too. Rocky 4, I didn't think it was close. I didn't know those people existed out there. Rocky 3, I believe, was the Mr. T Hulk Hogan one. Was it Clubber Vance? Not bad, don't get me wrong, but man, no Ivan Drago. Kudos, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to for the Top Gun people, for actually making, first of all, a movie that people want to go see at the theater in 2022. Holy, like that. It's not a superhero movie, not a comic book character. These things are absolutely rare. And then to survive the Tom Cruise public criticism of who he's been here the last couple of decades and everything that's been attached to him, and apparently they've gone the father-son heartstrings on this one. Oh, speaking of that, I saw something great about, I wanted to touch on this. Someone brought up Field of Dreams, right? Who was that brought that thing up? I'm scrolling back here. Troy, number one for you. I get that. I saw it on social media. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Ray Liotta, I mentioned last show, unfortunately recently passed away, age of 67. And to me, that's who he is. I guess number one, I would probably have to go Henry Hill in the classic Goodfellas. And then number two, he's Shoeless Joe Jackson to me, and the way they set that up and the whole thing. But I didn't realize this. I'm a massive baseball nerd, but I didn't realize Shoeless Joe was actually a lefty hitter. I know he's from the state of South Carolina originally. I apologize to all the fellow Carolina baseball nerds out there. I should have known this. But Ray Liotta says that's one of his biggest regrets. He was not a baseball guy at all. So he had to learn how to hit for the movie Field of Dreams. And I think he tried to learn left-handed. He just couldn't get it. So they basically just said, all right, just go ahead and do it right-handed. And he did. And what I saw from Kevin Costner on social media recently, he did an interview and he said, they showed this little clip in the social media post as part of it. So there's a scene in Field of Dreams where they're on the Field of Dreams, maybe for the first time, right? And Shoeless Joe hits a comebacker right at Kevin Costner and almost it knocks him down, or Costner tries to get out of the way and it falls down. I think it hits the bag of balls. And they said this thing wasn't scripted. Like, that wasn't CGI. That wasn't a double in there. It was just a natural phenomenon. The movie gods were with Field of Dreams, and Ray Liotta actually did that on a pitch that Kevin Costner threw in there. And Costner has the old college baseball background too, or not too, but much more qualified to do that as opposed to Ray Liotta. So that was pretty amazing to read and to think about, and it's pretty cool to me. I will watch that movie differently when I finally end up showing it to the sons, which I will definitely do. Haven't gotten to yet. Apparently, it was not a good interview with Dan Patrick earlier this year with Ray Liotta. That reminds me of Alshon Jeffrey had an interview with the DP show one time. It did not go great. You know, he is someone who I try to model myself after in a lot of ways, Dan Patrick, with the short questions, and you stay out of the way for the most part. You know, you pop in, you pop out, you let the guests do all the talking. So that can be an issue when it is not going well, or maybe the interviewee isn't feeling so comfortable. Maybe I'm guessing Liotta might have been out of his depth, or might not have been a huge sports fan. Even the ones they've done with some musicians have been great too, especially when they're into the specific like band or whatever it is. You watch it every Father's Day, Troy says. Good for you, sir. Well, and that's the genius I'm reading about this Top Gun sequel, that they have gone strong in the father-son category. Well done. It's good to hear. I can't wait to get the North Greenville baseball evaluation, the review of Top Gun, and to see if they do in fact get the movie theater tradition continued. And the fact that they're doing it, the College World Series. I mentioned the other day on the program that back in 2003, I ended up going to the Division II College World Series and the D1 College World Series that year. That was the year that I actually moved from Abilene, Texas in May to take the job back in Columbia, South Carolina. So Abilene Christian makes the Division II College World Series that year. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. Not too terrible a drive from Columbia, and ended up making the drive there. I think it was a week or two later that the Division I tournament was able to go out to Omaha. That was the first trip I made, first of 5 trips out to Omaha to cover the Gamecocks. And Division II College World Series quality, not far off at all from what you see in Omaha. The entire event, clearly not what the Omaha event is, but I think it's really cool for Landon Powell personally to get to do it back so close to where he grew up, and to have so many people around him to kind of join that celebration. And he said it perfectly, man, that this time of year, especially in college baseball with the grind that it is, remember they come back to the semester in January, and you're in season, man. You got 6 weeks these days to get ready to play games. And so here we are 5 full months later, and these guys are getting to do something at North Greenville that's never happened before. From the Division I standpoint, 64 teams now get to continue on their season, and that'll get cut down to 16 real quick after this weekend. Again, what makes it so special to follow these runs from the Gamecock and Clemson perspective, what we'll be missing out on, unfortunately, now for the next several months, that we just got so accustomed to and totally spoiled. No doubt about it, right? Hall of Fame coaches in Jack Leggett and Ray Tanner, who were somehow able to do it year in and year out. And if you talk to plugged in college baseball people, I think they'll tell you that that's one of the reasons that the rules ended up getting changed in a lot of ways, is because they were bringing in so many players, Ray Tanner specifically, that I've heard this referred to, bringing in so many players that other programs just could not compete with how they were doing, how they were managing the 11.7 scholarships and the whole thing. Junior college guys specifically coming in and almost having like tryouts during fall ball, and some would make it, others would not, and they have to move on. But then you get the 35 you can only have on the roster, right? 27 actives, I think, is what it is now in college baseball, or maybe was right before COVID. I think they loosened up a little bit here in the last couple of years. But to have seen that success time and time again, to get used to that sports calendar, I think, like most of us have. The College World Series runs, just incredible theater. And if you're lucky enough to get out to Omaha and experience firsthand, but you didn't have to, right? That's the great thing about how the College World Series gets covered. You know, you can get the feel, and the fact that you get a game every other day with your team. You get games every day, but then your team is playing every 2 days. You get to follow all of that. Man, it makes it so much fun. So much fun from a college baseball perspective. Did see, is it Eli White, the former Clemson, stand out with a tremendous catch in the big leagues this weekend. I think another former Clemson guy got his first major league start. From the Braves' perspective, it was Michael Harris II getting called up. A reason for Atlanta fans to be excited, and made a diving catch that he kind of misjudged and had to knock it down with his bare hand, I think, in game number 1. Got a hit and showed some speed going from first to third on a Ronald Acuna Jr. hit. Braves continue, though, to not get the results they're looking for from a team standpoint, hoping a guy like Michael Harris II getting out in center field, eventually going to move Ronald Acuna out to right when he's healthy enough to go every day. And then having Adam Duvall, they're moving him from center to left. I think that's going to be the outfield recipe for a bunch of success. Now, it's a matter of how big a hole are you digging yourself with the Mets there with their big lead. You want to be able to just stay in range, right? And we've seen it many, 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 many times where the Mets or the Phillies, even the Nationals, will jump out to a sizable league, but the Braves will just kind of consistently hunt them down. I know I'm pulling for that, being a Braves guy, and looking forward to seeing how Michael Harris II, now most hyped up prospect since Ronald Acuna Jr., how he lives up to the hype. Great story on The Athletic, and I apologize, even as I say it out loud, I know I rave about these stories on The Athletic, but I just highly recommend them. They're where I go for long-form sports these days, unless like a Sports Illustrated story pops up on the social media timeline, and other people have recommended it already, but I feel like The Athletic does it most consistently. But they covered his story of being in AA, and his parents end up individually getting a call from their son Friday night at 11:30. And they were asleep. They were in the same bed, but he called them each individually to make sure they're both on the phone at the same time when he told him he's getting called up. And they live in Atlanta. They raised him in Atlanta, a lot like the Jason Hayward story that I didn't realize was 12 years ago when he made his major league debut, to make me feel really old. But Michael Harris II, his parents, his dad especially. So they asked him, so you got called up to Gwinnett, right? That's the AAA team. He was playing AA. That made sense. They assumed, they were thinking in their mind, the logical timeline for their son to make the big leagues at 21 years old, I think he is what he is, was September call-ups when the rosters get expanded, and that's a typical type deal. But so he said, you're going to Gwinnett? And he's at higher. Of course, the only place higher to go to Atlanta. And he's like, you serious? And I think he kept repeating, you're serious? And he's been working as a post office employee and was supposed to ump Little League games on Saturday, the following day. And so canceled all of that, went and picked up his son, who had a early morning flight. I think his minor league team was down in Pensacola, so he flies from Pensacola to Atlanta. They go to Truist Field in the headquarters. They sign the big league contract, and he's in the lineup for the 4:10 game a little later that day against the Marlins. Great story, man. A great story to start a big league career. I guess Marquise Grissom has kind of tutored Michael Harris II in the Atlanta area, mentored him, maybe helped his development, and is massively high on him. He says, some people are just different. He's one of those guys. He's mentioned other guys like Chipper Jones was different, and other just amazing baseball players, and he puts Michael Harris II in that category. The tools are there, 5-tool kind of guy. Let's see if we can do them off the top of the head. 5 tools for baseball: hitting for average, hitting for power, speed, arm, and glove. I think those are the 5 tools, just off the top of my head. But he's apparently one of those guys. Being a no tool guy, it was always hard for me to come up with the 5 tools that I didn't have in baseball. But that's where we are this time of year on the sports calendar, unless you're a big hockey guy, which I'm not, like Scotty Eisberg is. You're into that. Again, I turned it on last night, maybe not intentionally by the 3rd period, but kind of like I wasn't going to be plugged in for 3 hours or whatever it is, maybe just less than that for a hockey game. But game 7, okay, I'm in. Let's check it out. It was already 3-0, and then they scored real quick to make it 4-0. And I think 6-2 was the final score or something like that. I get it if you're up in the Raleigh area, maybe over in Nashville, that you get attached to these runs and you really get into the whole thing. Just never been a part of the NHL hockey scene like that. I will tell you, though, I do endorse going to see hockey in person if you've never done it, the NHL specifically. I even making the jump from ECHL, which I'd gone to, I don't know, maybe half dozen times for sure. But seeing that jump up to the NHL level in person was massive. I don't know if it translates quite as much as in other sports, but it did for me, just from the really amateurish way that I watch hockey. Wow. I got to go see a Dallas Stars game back in the day. And that thing, it is just different. So accurate and precise with I guess you call it the stick handling and the passing, and just a beautiful game to watch in person, especially comparing it to lower levels of hockey that I'd seen before. Mark says on the YouTube live stream, I was curious who Michael Harris was when checking the box score the other day. I'll begin building my own internal hype as the next Andrew Jones. That's going to be a tough one, man. Tough one to live up to. Andrew Jones, you talk about different dudes, man. Just the way that he would catch balls in the outfield so easily. Just make it look like it was the easiest thing in the world. Got that feeling a little bit when Jackie Bradley Jr. would play center field for the Gamecocks, just how natural he made it seem. Because it's not easy for most of us mere mortals out there. And Jason gives a plug for Gamecock hockey. It's fun. Go next season, Tim. Yeah, they play out in Irmo. Certainly been around that team a little bit. Went out for a charity golf tournament to help raise money for them one time. Yeah, I believe it's fun. Those are guys, you talk about playing for the love of the game, club hockey. Absolutely. So I can see that from the hockey perspective. But being an amateur hockey guy who doesn't really know what the heck's going on, I don't know if I would have a full appreciation for it like I should. That would really help me enjoy that thing. But back to Andrew Jones, and I think it's a pretty good analogy, actually, for who Jackie Bradley Jr. has become defensively in the big leagues. Andrew Jones, some of those guys, man, I don't know what it is. And it's not a rep thing. It is a gift thing, right? Somehow a guy like Jackie Bradley Jr. knows where the ball is going to end up before other guys. Somehow. And that's if you don't have that natural ability, it doesn't matter how many fly balls you take. Certainly it would, you improve through practice, right? Progress, you see progress. But I mean, even the greatest big leaguers defensively just don't look nearly as natural as the greatest ever. And that's Andrew Jones for me, right up there. Yeah, number one, I think I would put Mark. And then Jackie Bradley Jr., probably the youngest I got to see it, or maybe just on the other level. I guess he was probably about the same age as Andrew Jones was when I saw him play for the first time. I think Andrew was 19 when he got called up there. I'm pretty positive. And then Jackie Bradley Jr. probably about 19 as well. I know he had an injury. He was getting over the first few weeks of his Gamecock career too. So those guys, man, those are the guys that bring me to sports a lot of times, that or at least certainly keep it going, make me drop my jaw, that just do things differently. From the basketball perspective, Warriors and Celtics, what are you guys thinking about this? To me, this is what I would have hoped for, maybe outside of a Cinderella run for the Mavericks against the Mavs, with kind of getting attached to Luka Doncic. But I prefer the Celtics winning in the East over the Heat, even though my respect for the Miami Heat in the NBA perspective as an organization, I haven't taken it to the level of the Patriots in the NFL, but it's pretty close. It got a lot closer this year, just to see how they've been doing it year after year after year. And in pro sports, how it's designed not for that to happen. I think LeBron James and the Lakers are a great example. But the makeup of the Celtics is a fun team. That Celtics-Bucks series was fantastic. And so this Warrior-Celtics deal, and you got to remember, I come at the Celtics, right? When I see Warrior-Celtics on the screen right now, I immediately think Run DMC, the Warriors, Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway, Run TMC, sorry. Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, Chris Mullin, the TMC. Tim, Mitch, and Chris. And then the Celtics, immediately it's Larry Bird, it's Danny Ainge, it's Dennis Johnson, it's Kevin McHale, and it's Robert Parrish. And it's Casey Jones coaching them, and Bill Walton sitting on the bench or laying down with a bad back or whatever he had back then, and the classic Showtime Lakers and Celtics, which I hear is a tremendous watch as well, which I haven't gotten to, which I hope to at some point. But that's where I think of the Celtics and the Warriors, and now to have the Splash Brothers and then Draymond Green added to that. And to me, they are the proven commodity, obviously, the multiple time champs. They got the activist head coach and Steve Kerr. And you got the Celtics, who we brought up with John Combs, the Westwood High School coach, the other day. He said, do you even know who coaches them? And Udoka is his last name, and a guy that apparently my uncle hit me up with on the show, played with my cousin down in Fort Myers. I think maybe a little pro ball. I don't know if that was AAU or pro ball one. And ended up going to be an assistant coach for Greg Popovich for 8 years, and now was there when Brad Stevens decided to move up. And clearly that's paid off for the Celtics organization. But Marcus Smart, just a passion he plays with, and the kind of odd player he is with being such a strength kind of guy, but I'm pretty sure just running the point for them these days. Jaylen Brown, what he's done in the playoffs. Al Horford apparently discovered the fountain of youth at 35 years old. I'm in for this Warriors Celtics NBA Finals. Thursday night, game number 1. It seems to me to be two teams that you can like, and that come at it from almost different sides of the spectrum, right? Warriors been there, done that, looking to be back on top. Some of the greatest of all time. Steph Curry, I mentioned I put him in my all-time top 5 as my point guard. Got a greatest shooter. I think it's indisputable, greatest shooter of all time. Then Klay Thompson, I think like Scottie Pippen-esque, almost underrated. Maybe he's become more valued since the impact of his injury was so great. Then you got the wild card it is Draymond Green and all the chaos he creates, usually for the best. And then the Celtics, kind of unproven chip on the shoulders guys. Mark says, I don't forgive Marcus Smart after picking Oklahoma State to win it all in my March Madness bracket a few years ago and them losing early. But he is going, or Craig's going, go Celtics. After chiming in with, you got to be a little crazy to play hockey or rugby. No doubt. No doubt, Craig. But Warrior Celtics NBA Finals, I'll go thumbs up on that one, the matchup for sure. Now it'll be a matter for me of getting a lot more games like we just got in Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals, as opposed to, what was it, 5 of the 7 that weren't close? And seemingly what the NBA has become a lot, that if another team makes a run and gets control of the game, then they're either too good to give it back, or guys don't have what it takes to get it back. Troy says Kyrie leaves Boston. Kevin Durant leaves Golden State, and here they are in the championship. Yep, interesting. There is something to that. Now, the Durant thing, not as much, right? Because, I mean, you do still have 3 Hall of Famers, I think, and certainly Steph Curry, and the Draymond Green one is maybe the questionable one you bring up. Klay Thompson, I think, no doubt. But the Boston one, yeah, the Kyrie Irving thing, interesting. All right, Adam's bringing it back around. Says, sorry I was late. Adam, you don't have to apologize to coming to the show, not at 10 a.m. every morning. I'm very salty about Mark Kingston staying. Like, do those decisions ruin Ray Tanner's legacy? So let's get back into that real quick, right? Because this is kind of the NCAA baseball show every day, every year, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, when the NCAA baseball tournament is set. No surprise the Gamecocks weren't picked. No surprise Clemson didn't make it. But now that it is reality, right? Clemson not making it 2 years in a row. They went 30-plus years, I think, missing it just one time. The fact that Tennessee is the number 1 NCAA tournament seed, no surprise this year, just that they're 53-7 going in, having just won the SEC tournament. You saw Florida go on a run, barely being able to edge out the Gamecocks in extra innings in that first single elimination game, then going on the run, getting guys to step up. One guy I saw that hadn't even pitched since like the beginning of April, maybe. I mean, reminds me exactly of what South Carolina used to do this time of year, not at the SEC tournament, but the NCAA tournament. Michael Roth, the best example of that back in 2010. Coastal Carolina, the only team from the state of South Carolina to make the NCAA tournament. And the news coming out on Friday that Mark Kingston will remain as the Gamecocks head coach. I want to say 5 years in, right? 5 years since he got the job, I guess is the way to put that. Really only 4 full seasons, but 2 of those, one of them being exactly a 500 record, one of them being a game under 500 record. That resume doesn't even compare to what Chad Holbrook did. So a bit surprising. I mentioned not shocked to see the news based on where the athletics department is right now, having shelled out an amazingly unfathomable amount of money in the buyout to Will Muschamp a couple of years ago, or I guess not even a couple of years ago now. And then being in transition in the basketball realm as well, with Lamont Paris coming in and Frank Martin, that situation having played out how it did, knowing the COVID impact to revenue into the athletics department, but also knowing where I should start with all that is by saying that I don't think Mark Kingston is a bad baseball coach. I don't think Chad Holbrook is a bad baseball coach. But not being a bad coach is a very different thing from being a really good coach in college baseball, especially. Ray Tanner was one of the best of all time, right? So that's where the bar was. Chad Holbrook, I think, especially never having been a head coach coming in, was set up to fail in a lot of ways. And when I say set up to fail, I mean as the successor to Ray Tanner. I get it. It was kind of right-hand man, and in that way it was handpicked. But then to have him as your boss and to know what those expectations were, if there weren't going to be College World Series teams right off the bat, which is really hard to do when you're talking about 8 teams and 300 plus, then those of us from the outside are going to see that as a failure just because of what the program had been. That's just what it was. So Mark Kingston comes in now 4 years after all of that goes down and gets a bit of a reset. But the program, from a perennial powerhouse standpoint, just not where it was previously. Had the reputation of still having good players, but not consistently winning at the championship level. And that first year, it looked like it was going to be pretty disappointing. That change wasn't going to change results at all. And then Carolina goes on a run at the end of that first year of the Mark Kingston era and gets 1 game away from the College World Series. And Mark Kingston changes his reputation amongst Gamecock fans, or raises his reputation pretty quickly, right? This is a guy who came in with South Florida and Illinois State head coaching stops on his resume. Not exactly close to other guys Gamecock fans were hoping would end up taking the job, like a Kevin O'Sullivan from Florida who went on to win the national championship that year and obviously has stayed at Florida and continued to have that program rolling. Tim Corbin with South Carolina ties in the state of South Carolina, or Kevin O'Connell, the Virginia guy, names that popped up and were probably maybe a little bit unrealistic, but for a fan base that saw Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier come coach the football team, I get it. And to have seen the Gamecock baseball team win back-to-back national championships, I get it. I don't think it was that unrealistic to consider the possibility that these guys would do it. Now, to have seen Jim Schlossnagle move from TCU to Texas A&M and have them at the number 5 overall national seed this year, I don't think it was unrealistic for Gamecock fans to think that that was a possibility for their program back in the day. But to see Ray Tanner go outside of his baseball family, any kind of connections, or really the University of South Carolina, even SEC family, that was surprising to me, that they were basically no connections. And having asked him the question at the time, the feeling I got from him was that was pretty much on purpose after the Chad Holbrook situation turned into what it turned into, that it had to move forward in a different direction, and all the personal stuff that was involved in that just the personal relationship that was. Mark says that was the most inopportune national championship run by O'Sullivan. It seemed all but set in stone. We would hire him until they went deep, at least based on reportings. And I don't know how much validity there is to that. There was his personal situation. I think a divorce was involved, and his prior stint in the state of South Carolina as the Clemson pitching coach, and how much that played into it and the whole thing. I don't know. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? Mark Kingston became the guy and has not gotten the Gamecock baseball program a championship contender. And so I kind of assumed that after 5 years on the job, finishing under 500, I was a bit surprised that a move wasn't made. Just from a bottom line, results-based business. I think 138 and 108 maybe is the overall record, which when compared to previous Carolina coaches, pretty unimpressive. And compared to the championship expectations Gamecock fans have, I get it. But with the COVID factor in there, with the other coaching situations factored in there, the economic situation, I'm not shocked by the news. And I don't rule out that Mark Kingston could turn this thing around. I mean, there are a bunch of great examples out there of slow starts to careers. Shane Beamer saw the best one as he grew up at Virginia Tech with his dad, Frank. And maybe this is a bit of apples, oranges comparison, and you don't want to hear it. And I get it, Adam. You're ticked off by this. Totally understand. You're saying this is unacceptable. The results have to be better. I get it. Mark Kingston gets it. Ray Tanner gets it. Everybody gets it. The question is, how do you go about making that happen? And we talked a lot earlier, had Trey Dyson on, and I was talking with Scott Eisberg about it, just me and Scott separately. Scott being a TV guy down in Charleston, and having been around the Gamecock baseball program several decades as well, being a student back in the day, the College World Series run. The first time around for Ray Tanner and company, he knows. And he said, if they had moved on from Mark Kingston, then there wouldn't even be a question whether or not, or who the Gamecocks would get. He thought that Landon Powell up in North Greenville would be the next guy for sure. And I mentioned that his name being brought up in the conversation after the Chad Holbrook deal, it would have also set Landon up for failure, I think, at that point in his career. And Ray Tanner would have he got plenty of criticism for staying within the family and going with his hand-picked assistant guy, his right-hand man right in there, the first time around with Chad Holbrook not having been a head coach. If you go to then one of your former players who's never been a Division I coach right after that, and it didn't work out well immediately for the expectations that is Gamecock baseball, especially then 5 years ago, it would have been a really difficult situation. Could have got ugly real quick. But now that North Greenville has made the Division II College World Series for the first time, I thought the timing might have been perfect for that transition to happen, but it looks like it's not going to. And Mark Kingston will get another year to prove that he can be the Carolina baseball coach that gets the program back to championship expectations, to championship contention. And it's not going to shock me if he does prove that. I've seen enough in his tenure to think he knows to get the perception, I perceive that he knows exactly what it takes. Had the big time injuries happen, or the injuries happened to the big time players this year, had they not happened, could this team have done that? Possibly. I don't know if they got enough production from newcomers that they needed, freshmen specifically. And if you're going to have freshmen in your everyday starting lineup, they got to be guys. They got to be dudes, I guess you say in baseball these days. And I think they might have a couple of them. A couple of them might not turn out to be exactly what they had hoped to be. I don't know. But they're gonna have to figure it out really quick for sure. Yeah, Coach K, another good example. People at Duke that wanted him gone. Who else was I thinking? Bobby Bowden, I think early on. Tommy Bowden talked about early on in Bobby Bowden's career. It was a struggle. I think we had on a guest the other day, and Jerry Coots, who's really familiar with the Florida State program, having seen that the first year was under 500, I think, for Bobby Bowden at Florida State, 5-6 maybe, and then after that, it took off. York says, if the regional or Omaha's a standard, would we have fired Ray Tanner all those years ago? Yeah, maybe it was the first couple of years, I think, that he didn't make he might have made it in 97, and then it was in 99 maybe where they won the East and didn't make it. Right, so it would have been 2 of his first 4 years as well. Didn't make the NCAA tournament. But I think we all understand that a recipe for sustained success in college sports is not to change coaches every 4 to 5 years. Gamecock football certainly was criticized for that plenty back in the day, and rightly so. You think York says because Ray is making decisions in part based on his history. Well, no doubt you have to, right? And there were some that wanted Dabo Swinney gone also early on, no doubt. So I would prefer that a college program make a decision and miss with more patience as opposed to less. I think that just is better for everyone involved, right? You don't bow down to what certainly becomes a loud segment of your fan base, but can be overblown via social media these days, right? The vocal minority. You don't bow down to that pressure. If you see enough tangible evidence that your guy can still be the guy, if your faith has not been shaken to its core. You can't allow a vocal minority or social media pressure, whatever it is, to shake that. Now, you also have to factor in other issues too. Economics of the situation, very real world stuff. Now, as I say this, what comes up is the Frank Martin situation, where it did seem like Frank was set up for the opposite of success in his final year with his contract situation, and we saw it kind of play out. And I don't know if that was the best situation for Gamecock basketball. We'll see what Lamont Paris can now do. And we'll see what Frank Martin ends up becoming as the coach at UMass and where that basketball program goes. So I think a lot went into it for sure. Ultimately, I get tons of frustration from a Gamecock baseball perspective with Mark Kingston remaining as the head coach. I think what you got to realize is look at just the SEC record this year, right? If it had been several games worse, if it had dropped to a relatively embarrassing situation, I think it's a no-brainer. But the fact that Carolina was as relevant as they were in the SEC for as long as they were the 10th seed, right? Ole Miss didn't make the tournament, didn't make the SEC tournament, and got into the NCAA tournament. Mississippi State won the national championship last year, didn't. They finished dead last in the SEC this year. Those are all just facts. I'm not saying that it should make you feel better, and I'm not saying that the 10th seed should be Carolina's ultimate goal in college baseball for sure in the SEC. But that's where the program is as we sit here today. Plenty of reason to be frustrated and upset by that. But now that Mark Kingston is the head coach moving forward, I think from the fan standpoint, the best you can do is support the program as much as possible. Hope he turns it around. I don't think pulling against him does anything. Monty Lee is a great example of a change does not guarantee positive results. A local guy with a proven track record and a really good resume doesn't mean he's going to be the guy that gets the program back to where it was or is automatically going to win. The paper trail doesn't necessarily translate to automatic results, especially from a college baseball standpoint in this state, as we've seen with where those programs were. It is a different day in the state of South Carolina from a college baseball perspective for sure. And it's a bummer for those of us who latched on to these runs and love college baseball this time of year. Now it's the job of athletics departments, those baseball programs, to make sure this is the exception and this doesn't become a trend. And again, South Carolina, not the only place. Arizona State sitting in that same boat right now. Southern Cal has been there for a long time. It is not guaranteed in baseball at all. Apparently, it's not guaranteed that we're going to go just 2 hours going over this morning. Appreciate you tuning in, however you did it. The video stream on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. The audio live stream on Podbean. And then the audio version of the podcast goes out all over the place to the major platforms. Thanks for tuning in, man. Great talking with you guys. Plenty of college baseball today. Who knows what we'll get into tomorrow. We'll get some more guests on for you. Really appreciate Scott Eisberg popping on. Trey Dyson, Landon Powell from The Office. Good stuff on a Tuesday morning. Mark, Troy, York, Craig, Adam, appreciate you guys joining in the conversation on the live stream as well. The more you can interact with me, I think the more all of us will get from this program. The name of it is Tim Hill Unrestricted Free Agent, and that's the Tuesday edition. We'll see you guys tomorrow.